we touched on American fans and how we are today with live music. For a moment, compare that with other countries.
I've been one of those who's been fortunate to be pretty successful at music in my life, and in the early years when I was a recording artist and got to tour and travel, I did get to travel to other venues in other countries, and I found the music was just embraced more by other societies other than the American culture, particularly in Europe. Europe just goes ballistic over their music, and they are kind of doing what I've just described. They're passionate about it. If you think not, watch some of the giant metal fests that are going on in Europe where we'll put 20,000 people in the seats. Here they'll put 120,000 people in the seats because they love it. They're passionate about it. They support their bands. They wear their shirts. They fly their banners. They're just all about endorsing and supporting and being there for the band. The band's there for them, but they're there for the band. And when you think about it, it's a perpetuating thing, because if we support them, they support us. We get to keep on doing this because they have then the resources to be able to come back and play, because at $4 a gallon for gas and airfare being through the roof, and everything, those bands have to pay all of that. To get their equipment there now is another issue altogether. To ship a Marshall amplifier to Europe, you can almost buy another Marshall amplifier for what it would cost you to ship it. So, but they can't, necessarily provide everything at the venue that they're going to, so they have to take it. So the costs are through the roof. So you do find a lot of these groups having to go through corporate sponsorship to get jobs done. There's nothing wrong with that, except for the fact that means that we as fans aren't doing our job. Because if we were buying their music, we were supporting them and making sure, just like when you drive a car, you don't find, at least in this country, the government underwriting the cost of making a car. Car manufacturers count on us buying the car in order to pay for it. Fans don't support the music, so the music guys got to go to Sony, or they go to Yamaha and they say, hey, listen, can you underwrite us for $1 million, because we can't get on the planes and fly to these venues because we don't have the money. So much of that is done in the sake of trying to perpetuate the industry, and knowing that they probably won't get the return on the money, which is a real travesty. The fans should be supporting the bands. And I don't care what level, if that's a 200-seat local bar or a 200,000 seat open venue in Europe, or timed or in Central Park. We should be packing the arenas, packing the venues. When I was on the road, it was strictly an SRO performance everywhere I played. SRO is standing room only. We never thought about the fact that nobody would come. We were just trying to figure out where we're going to put them all. It was always the case. And I really feel bad for bands now that are playing and they kind of feel like we're white noise in the room. We are no more than that blazing TV that's also going on in the background at the bar, because nobody's paying attention to us anyway. We're just white noise so that people can sit there and have a conversation. When I went to hear bands, I didn't go there to talk to my buddy sitting next to me. I went to hear the band. Nowadays, it seems like it's party fest where everybody's drinking and having a good time, but they're not really paying attention to what's going on. They are being entertained, and it blows right over their heads. And that's really sad. That's a sad testament of our culture in how we've trained our kids to respect and embrace what should be probably one of the most valuable things in their lives.
Absolutely. We've talked a whole lot about the fans and the support. What about industry entities and how that's changed, and what some may view as their lack of support? One obvious instance or example of that is radio. Can you kind of touch on that, like what it used to be like compared to what it is today?
Yeah. Well, as Jerry mentioned, when when I grew up, radio was our main venue. There was no MTV. There was basically three major networks: ABC, CBS, and NBC. That was it. No cable, no internet, really no mass media to blast at anything. There was no email, so you couldn't email anybody. You had to put a postage stamp on a letter and mail it, or put your reel-to-reel tape in a box and ship it. But our main support came from local radio. I remember recording stuff and taking it to the local radio station. And I was joking with Jerry before we started this interview that I would have to run back to my car to make sure I was in my car tuned into the radio station before they actually played it, because they would put it on the air almost as quick as they'd get it. That's how supportive they were of the local artists and the musicians that were doing their stuff. Nowadays, if you don't have an agency that's representing you and your music's been brought in through a consulting group with some guy sitting there that has no personal connections with you, he doesn't know you from Adam, and quite honestly doesn't really care about you, because his job is just blast the media, over the market, and just try to appease, what they call the 35-year-old housewife, which, wasn't the case when I grew up. So radio's really lost its magic for me. I find that I don't listen to it a lot. I listen to my pre-recorded music when I get in my car, because it's not supporting the music. Music now is a secondary means for most music radio stations even. They find their commercial advertising is their big go-to. Their political thought of the day, whatever their soapbox happens to be that day, is what they're pushing. And if it didn't come from the agency to push together their playlist, it doesn't get played. I don't care who you are. Our local heroes here in Rockford, Cheap Trick, I would venture to say, would have a hard time if they produced a thing and took it down to the local radio station and said, hey, would you play this? If they didn't know it was Cheap Trick and just said, play this, it's a great recording by a local band, it probably wouldn't get played, because they just are ignoring the musician, and it sort of tossed them out with this mass production. So radio has become kind of a lost art in a sense of its value to the musician. So I think they have to work even harder now to do what was being done in my day.
Right. Now there are, from my experience, there are some good internet radio stations that
Right.
that are willing to do that, but then you're back to the same problem of getting people to hear it.
Yep.
Because of the advertising on the internet.
Yeah. Well, like you said, there's always the rebel. I call him, which I love. I'm a supporter of the underdog, the rebel. I'm always for the guy that seems to succeed the least. There was a radio station out of Cleveland I'd listen to when I would get near Cleveland, Ohio, and their logo was actually a buzzard. So they're the scrap pickers, because they would go after the artist that nobody would listen to, that nobody would play. The guy with the 8-minute cut that did not fit radio, they would play, because they loved the musicians, And there again, that was just a radio station. It was owned by an independently wealthy billionaire that said, I do not need advertising money to run this. This is my toy, my game. I'm giving it to the music industry. So this radio station ran 24/7 with no advertising, which was really great, because now you found out if you're good enough to make airplay on their station, you knew you were good, because that's all they played was pure music by pure musicians. But, these stations aren't all run by individual billionaires that have that passion to see music succeed. Even in our town here, of the radio stations in this town, They're all, now all owned by big conglomerate groups that own 500, 600 radio stations. So whatever station 1 gets, station 497 gets the same programming, and we have no choice. We do what they're told. It's kind of like, you know, selective programming. We will kind of robotically go and do what you say to do when you say to do it. And I think that's a travesty. You know, radio should be kind of an extension of our artistic expression, other than talk radio. I understand that, and I like some of that too, but I'm talking music now. And from a musical standpoint, it should promote the passion and the art of music, not some special interest because some guy in Atlanta says, play this song, and this song in that order, and don't deviate. I don't need that kind of control over my music, nor should the music industry. I think we need a vocal expression, and, you know, short of us becoming independently wealthy where we can just promote it ourselves, I don't know what other avenue we have, because most of us, myself included, I own a recording studio, and I have to justify whether I can afford to record in my own place, because I have to pay for all this equipment to run and to do what I do. And if it doesn't have an end use where I can actually say, you know, I can see the benefit in recording this $5,000 invested song I just produced, then I've kind of wasted my time. It shouldn't be a waste of time. We should have a place to take it, and they'll embrace it and they'll play it. You know, I'm sitting on a heavy catalog of material myself because I don't know where to take it. And I've been in this industry my whole life. It's a very hard thing to identify today. Where do you go? What do you do? And how do you do it?